Hi and welcome to WEH Videos. My name is Skip and this is part 4 on my series on how to build your own instrument panel or control panel for X-Plane. And in part 4 here we are going to do the actual soldering. We've learned how to identify the wires and all the components. We've mounted them on our control panel. So now let's just get to it. Before we get into the actual soldering of our panel, I want to give you some tips on soldering. Now I have 4 components here. These are the button switches and this is the rocker switch. Now you're going to be ganging a bunch of these together, either rocker switches or the button switches. And the way to do that is you're going to take your wire and you're going to strip it bare. So let's just strip a little off here, and we're going to have to just take a couple of shots at getting all the insulation off, taking 3 or 4 inch pieces at a time. So now we have our wire. What I did for ganging all those wires together was I wrapped it. There's a little notch, a little tiny notch just below the hole. So now I'm going to exaggerate the wrap here, but what I did is I took the wire and then I wrapped it around like so. And then I went to the next wire and I wrapped it, and I went to the next wire and I wrapped it. And I kept doing that. If I had 15 switches to do, I would wrap them all together. And then it's really easy to solder them all up. So let's go ahead and we're going to solder this terminal on this component to this terminal on this component. First off, we get our wire. And we're going to strip, a little less than a ½ inch off the end, like so. We're going to pass it through the hole and then bend the wire up to make a nice little hook. And then we're going to drop it down. And then we're going to move it over here, like so. We're going to bring it up. We're going to cut the wire off up here, like so. We get our stripper, and we're going to take just a little bit off the end, like so. And we're going to pass it through the hole. It's a nice big hole on this one. And again, we're going to bend the wire around, like so. And now we're going to move it down and move that one down. And we're going to make a nice, neat little wire there. And now to solder, first off, make sure we got a nice hot soldering iron, and we want to make sure that tip is nice and shiny. Now what you want to do is make sure you're heating up the terminal and the wire. You don't just sit here and melt the solder on the iron. That won't work. You put the iron on the components and then you put the wire, touch the solder to that. See how quickly that jumped in there? That component is now soldered. Let's just show, whoops, it's still hot. There we go. Now let's go over to the next one. Still have a little solder on the iron, so that's okay. We're just going to touch it, and then we're going to touch the solder to the components, and if necessary, touch it to the iron. And we're done. Now I clean these up a little bit. I push them out, I get that wire out of the way. And now if I need to run another wire, I'm going to pass it through here maybe, and let this wire hold that wire down. So that works quite nicely. Alright, now let's put 2 wires in this terminal here. So we're going to strip the wire, a little less than a ½ inch. And we'll thread that through the little hole. About halfway through, I'm going to pull it up and pull it over, and that'll give me a little hook. I'm going to crimp it with my pliers, keep it in there. And now we're going to get another wire, and we're going to strip the end off of it about the same. And let's see if we can get that guy in there. I was able to get a lot of them in on my panel, and some of them didn't work so well. It's a tight fit. There we go. It came through finally. Now I'm going to grab that one and pull it around and smash it down. Now I have the two wires there. And what I do is I'll push them down like this so they're straight down, and I'll push them close to the terminals. Okay. Now we're going to get our solder, and we'll solder these two together. Now remember, we're going to put a little solder, that nice clean tip, a little solder on the tip, and then we'll touch it to the components and the wire, and then we'll just touch there, just like that. Oops, solder didn't get over here, so let's put a little more on there. There we go. I end up putting too much solder on most of the time. I just want to make sure. So there we go. We've got those two wires soldered. All right, if you need to get two wires on the same lug, but it won't go through the hole, take your wire and cut it a little bit shorter this time on the tip. And now you just want to make a little tiny hook on the end. Okay, just like that. Very small hook. And then you take that and you hook it around the other wire, making sure that you are touching the wire, not the insulation. And once you get that on there, crimp it down, and now you can solder those two wires together to the terminal. Again, putting a little solder on the tip, and this time you might want to put a little more solder on there just to make sure you get both wires together. And once they're there and cooled, you can push them down and you're ready to go. So I think that's enough information on soldering. You should be able to jump in now and solder up all your components. And let's go do that now. All right, so after watching my video here, I thought maybe there might be some confusion. So I want to clarify some things. And so I want to show you the components I've ganged together. And so the 6 switches on the bottom are ganged together, and I have them all numbered. And so when I refer to a wire or a component, they're pretty much the same thing. When I say I want to go to 26, it's going to be one of the components in this area. For 24, it's going to be one of these components all ganged together, and the colored lines here indicate the components that are ganged together. So I hope that helps you as you watch this video. Alright, it's time to do some soldering, and as you can see, I've jumped quite a ways ahead soldering up a few buttons and switches. I've done the first 5. So the first thing I did was write a number next to each component. So you can see I have a 24 here and here, a 26. All these components here have a 27 below them. So I've put numbers corresponding to the wire that will be ganged together. So all these will be ganged together with wire number 27. All these here, if we jump up here, are with wire 24, and all these here are with wire 26 and 25 up here, and so on. For example, I know that wire 27 coming off my circuit board will create 12 characters with other wires. So I have ganged wire 27 right here in the center of the switches at the bottom. Now I just need to solder the other wires, or the lower numbered wires, to the terminals on each switch, and then when I operate the switch, I should get a character. Now before soldering any wires to the switches though, I tested them again in X-plane. And I started with the low numbers first that created characters. So with wire number 27, this one here, I started out with wire number 3. And notice I have written a 3 here at the bottom. So this is telling me that this is 27, and this bottom terminal, I'm going to connect wire number 3 to it. And I took wire number 3 and I touched it to all these bare wires to make sure they produce characters. And I did this for all the other wires, 4, 5, 6, 11, etc., touching them to the bare wire on the switches, making sure they created the characters I need in X-plane. I have done all the wires up to wire number 7. Notice I have 6 here and 7 here, and my next wire is going to be number 8. Alright, I'm sorry to say I made a mistake with wire number 8. So now we're going to do wire number 9. So here's wire number 9. And now let's take a look at the chart here and see what I can do. On wire number 9, I can use 26, 25, 24, 22, and 21. So now I'm going to take this wire and touch it to those wires. So let's put the USB plug back in the computer and check the outputs. So let's move up just a little bit here so you can see the computer. And I've used a Word document here instead of X-plane because it's producing characters that will show up here. So now I'm going to take wire number 9 and I'm going to touch it to the first wire, which will be 26, and that's this ganged bunch of components here. The bare wire is 26, and that gives me an 8. And 25, this component and that component are 25, so we'll touch that wire. We get number 5. 24, here, 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 and here. These are all 24. That should give me a 2. 23, there's nothing. Let's just check that. Nothing but 23. 22 should give me a backslash. How about that? And 21 should give me a 0. So, now I know that this is all going to work, so I've checked it all off. And the next thing I do is I write it down in red on my sheet here so I know everything is correct. The next thing we want to do is figure out the route we are going to take. First component is going to be wire 26, so we're going to look for a 26 in here that I can use. And here's a 26, and here's a 26, same here. Now I've been working up and over from the left, so I might just go from the circuit board over here to 26, right here, and then I can jump right up here to 25, and then where's a 24? Well, here's a 24. So anyway, these are the kinds of things you need to work out as you're doing this. And I'm going to go ahead and wire this up. And I may or may not take that route. But this is the process. All right, I finished wiring up wire number 9, which is the blue one coming off the circuit board. And I came up here and picked up the first wire, which is 26. So this component has 26 gang to it. And I soldered wire number 9 to the other terminal, and then I went to a component with wire 25 on it. I soldered it here. I followed over this way to a wire with 24 gang to it, and then over here to a wire with 22 gang to it, and then over to the other side with wire 21. So let's take a look and see how this works. So I'm going to plug the USB cable in. And now I'm going to push this button here, I hope. Yes, number 8. And then we're going to come up here. That component worked. And we come over here to this one here. And that one worked. And then the far one, let's just give that a try. Flip the switch, and we got the 0. So all the components are working. Let's just do it again. Isn't that great? We got that working. So all the buttons are working, generating the characters. So now what I have done is on my sheet, I have written in red the actual character that is generated. Because when I'm done here, I want to make sure I don't have any duplicates. The big X's here are no characters. I want to make sure I have all this worked out. So when I'm done, if something is wrong, I can reference this to see where I might be able to remedy the problem. So that's it for part 4. Let me just go over some things here. Keep your wires close to the panels It's very important. The more wires we get here, the more cluttered it's going to be. Bring the wires down off of each component like I have here on these and these over here. Keep the wires neat coming off your circuit board so you can follow them. When you are jumpering the lower numbered wires, bring it down to the panel, run it over to the component, and bring it up again. You're going to jumper that component to another component, keeping the wire low and then bringing it up again. Also notice that on the bare wires here, where we jumped the large numbered wires, we need to keep those high. I didn't take those down. I don't want them down. I want them up where I know nothing else is going to touch them. When soldering, remember to put just a little bit of solder on the tip and then hold it next to the component and the wire, and then you're going to touch the solder to the component and the iron at some time. Sometimes you can just do it with the component. You can experiment with that. If you have trouble getting the two wires through the little holes on your switches, then go ahead and use that soldering technique I showed you previously in the video. And finally, remember to check every wire combination before you solder them up. You don't want to have to be unsoldering stuff. It makes things a little more complicated. And just for safety, unplug the USB cable from the computer before you do any soldering. So that's it. If you like this, please click the like button. If you'd like to leave a comment or send me a message, that would be great. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.